So today for art slash France, we are looking at the artist Claude Monet. I think he was mentioned in our PowerPoint at the beginning of the week on France, our overview lesson, just kind of touching on all little bits and bobs to do with France. And Claude Monet is one of the most famous artists to ever come out of France, and as you can see, he was born back in 1840 and died in 1926. Okay, and a very famous painter and artist whose influence can be seen even today. He was the founder, so he began what was known as the Impressionist movement. Okay, so Impressionist painting, and Impressionism in painting comes mainly from painting real life, everyday, normal situations and expressing yourself as you see it. And so we can have a look at Claude Monet here. So Monet is known as one of the founders of the Impressionist movement, along with other artists experimenting with painting styles at that time. Okay, so there were very strict rules to do with painting before Impressionism. It was very strict and rigid, and Claude Monet and other artists were beginning to experiment and express themselves and be a bit more creative with their own paintings, and this brought out the Impressionist movement. Okay. And it came from one of Monet's most famous paintings, which can be seen here, Impressionism at Sunrise. Okay, and as you can see, it's an everyday scene. Beforehand, the rules of art were always very, fancy pictures of fancy buildings and fancy people, and it was all very, very grand. Whereas Impressionism mainly was to do with the everyday. Someone walking in a park, and as you can see here, people at a foggy dock at sunrise. Okay, and it was about seeing the great in the everyday. Okay, and Impressionism can be characterized, so one of the main characteristics of it, even though it mostly came from the artist's own expression, but one of the common characteristics of it were very small, thin, yet quite visible brush strokes, which you can see throughout it. Okay, you can see all the brush strokes, and as well as that, light played a very important role in Impressionism as well. Okay, which you'll see in some of the other paintings, and passing of time. Okay, light and using light to show the passing of time. Okay, and as you can see in this picture, it's quite clearly sunrise. Okay, it has that hazy morning feel. As I said, changing light was one of the big features of Impressionism, and Monet, as it said there, often painted the same scene many times. Okay, and by painting the same scene many times, he was able to use light in a different way to show the changing of time and seasons. Okay, so have a look at these paintings here. Each one is the same scene, but what does the light tell you in each one? Okay. And how does the light affect the feel of the paintings? This one down here in particular reminds me of the long summer evenings, where it's still, those evenings where it's still bright at 9:30, 10, it's still warm. That's what it reminds me of. Okay, another one of his paintings where he paints the same scene, and again you can see those thin brush strokes, and again an everyday scene using light to show movement and the changing of time. Weeping Willow. And he painted this in honour of those who died in the Great War. And again, you can see those very thin, visible brush strokes. Okay? Because as well, beforehand, in traditional conservative painting, it would have been very much focused on making things look as real to life as possible. Okay? So those strokes be more blended in, whereas Impressionism, you could see each stroke, and it was very clear that it was a painting, not, you know, you see some pictures and you can't believe they're paintings, they look so real, but this was more, he believed, more expressive, and I think it's a lovely picture. And as well as that, he had a very distinct technique. You could see that hanging up, and you'd know it was a Monet by the brush strokes and by the colour and by the technique being used. Now this is one of his most famous, well, this scene is one of the most famous scenes painted by Claude Monet. He did many of them, of this Japanese bridge, and in fact this is what I would like you to do for me. Okay, so what I want you to do is, and you can look up, there's many versions of this painting because he painted many of them. It was one of the favourite places to go. He would sketch it and paint it many times, and some of them were huge as well. So what I would like you to do is, and the medium you use, medium being whether it's paint or pencil or crayon or colouring pencil, markers, whatever you want to use, chalk, whatever you want to do, I want you to see how well you can emulate and produce a picture of the water lilies and Japanese bridge. That's what I want you to do for art today. So Monet moved to Giverny in France, and he spent many hours painting the water lilies and the bridge in a series of huge paintings. Okay, and there is a room in the Musée, which is French for museum, Musée de l'Orangerie in Paris, and there's a whole room purposely built for displaying his paintings. Okay, and that's a photograph of him on the bridge. Okay. Another one of his paintings is the one with an umbrella. Again, as I said, his paintings were always of the everyday. They weren't always of kings and queens and prime ministers and, you know, famous buildings and monuments. They were the everyday. A haystack, as we saw already, a tree, a bridge, and here's just a woman with an umbrella. And again, you see those thin, visible strokes. Okay? Another one of his paintings, the garden in flower. You can see common features there that have been in his paintings all along. Again, can you see how you'd be able to identify Monet quite easily, or at least be able to identify someone who is, sorry, you can see somebody who has been influenced by him. Okay, and there's a self-portrait of himself, of course, self-portrait. Okay, and again those thin strokes, even though it's quite a obviously it's quite a real looking picture. Okay, and you can see how he uses light again. There's always light, always light. Okay, you can see here where the sun is shining, the dark, the shadow here of the building, and the light. Okay, and again light on that side of his face, and the thin strokes. 1886, and here he is. Okay, so that's Claude Monet. So as I said, I'd love you to try and emulate that picture for me, okay, as best you can. Whether it be pencils, paint, colours. Okay. And I look forward to seeing what you produce. Okay. Have fun.